Greetings, friends of the apocalypse. This is Podcast at Ground Zero, episode 63. We'll be talking to author Benjamin Wallace. I am Jared the Apocalypse Nerd Wallace. He is Adam Baum Glancy. And our special guest on this show is the original post-apocalyptic nomadic warrior himself, author Benjamin Wallace.
Welcome to the bunker.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome. So this week, like we were saying, author Benjamin Wallace. Wow, we have an author on this time. We're so sophisticated. Benjamin,
you're an author. You're an author, and you're even named Wallace.
I know, but
that counts.
Not really.
We have an embarrassment of Wallaces on tonight. We really do.
I know. It's we outnumber you. So Benjamin has a. I forgot to ask. Do you prefer Benjamin full name or do you prefer short Ben?
Ben is fine.
Yep. Ben is fine. I just wanted to make sure what you're more comfortable with because I don't want to start shortening it and you'd be like, "Hey, dude, it's Benjamin." So
if we had those bars at the bottom of the page, we could have our names on it, and we wouldn't make these mistakes. But apparently, Google had other plans for us tonight.
So Benjamin writes a series of books called the Duck and Cover Adventures, and he has several books there, and we're going to get into the meat of that when we start talking about the show. Just a couple quick things real quick before we start. Again, it's been a couple of months since I've seen you guys. We're sorry, but, as we always say, life happens. So, but now we're getting back on track. Ben's our first show so far. It's our second show this year, and then we and Scott have a couple of other shows lined up. So we got a bunch of material coming up this way. So we're gonna try to get back on that horse and get some shows for you. I had a couple of things I wanted to talk about, but I've totally gone dark. I don't remember what I was going to talk about.
It's because you're starstruck. You are starstruck by our guest.
Yes.
That is the answer.
I am. And Ben, anytime you want to talk, because me and Scott will try to overtalk each other and dominate the conversation. So just know that's going to happen. So just jump in anytime. Don't wait for a pause when we talk, because there may not be one.
Gotcha. Okay, we'll do.
I want to set those ground rules there, because me and Scott like to talk. So, a couple of things. I remember one of the things I wanted to talk about. I posted on the blog. People is remember a year or two ago we had a couple of indie filmmakers on the show for a film called Apocalypse Rock. It is now finally available. I made a blog post about that with the links back to their website, which I think is just apocalypserock.com. And they have digital download, they have DVD, Blu-ray, all kinds of extra stuff to get that movie. I haven't picked up myself yet, but I will eventually, and then we'll probably review it. But it is now available, so that is there. And that was only. There's just been others, I don't have any new Kickstarters, anything, nothing to talk about there. Any movies coming out. I'm kind of not in the loop currently. But one quick thing I wanted to share though, just one little bit of geekery that me and Scott have talked about before, just because I think it's amusing, is there's a show on the Sci-Fi Channel. If people aren't aware of it, it's not The Apocalypse, but it's called The Expanse. Ben, you heard of that show?
I have. I hadn't had a chance to check it out yet, but I was going to get into the books.
I heard about it. Heard a lot of good things about it.
Yeah.
Very good show. I really enjoy it, and I'm very finicky. So if I like it, you'll probably like it. So one of the things I found amusing in the show there is this story does have a point. In the show there is because it's a space, Earth, Mars, the asteroid belt, and there's a ship that people get. It's called the Rocinante. Okay, now. My history of me with the Rocinante. First time I heard the word Rocinante was I was listening to Rush in the early 80s, as a young teenager, off their Farewell to Kings album. The song
like we all did.
Yeah, and still do, and should. If you were a true gaming nerd, you should be listening to Rush. Farewell to Kings, Cygnus X1 is a song, and there was a line. It says, "On my ship, the Rocinante." at the time, I hadn't read Don Quixote. I didn't know what Rocinante was. And this is pre-internet, so I had to do some research and try to find out, what is this Rocinante? So, I worked on it, found it, discovered it. Wow, that's really cool. It's this guy's horse's name, the ship. Wow, that's so neat, like the 13-year-old me thought. So that was my first exposure to the term. Later on, late 80s, early 90s, we were playing Dungeons & Dragons again, of course. There was an expansion that came out for the game, a whole new setting called Spelljammer. It was like D&D in space. Our game master had brought a little bit of that into our game in the Forgotten Realms, and we had one of those ships, one of the Spelljammer ships, and we wound up hijacking it, stealing it, taking the crew. So we acquired a Spelljammer ship, and we had to name it. So immediately I go, let's name it the Rocinante, because I heard a Rush song talk about a spaceship called the Rocinante, so of course I had to name it the Rocinante.
It's naturally just follows one after the other.
It follows. Now fast forward to 2017 when I'm watching The Expanse. It's not a big spoil, it's just the name of a ship, but apparently a ship is hijacked and stolen, and they have to give it a new name, and they call the ship the Rocinante. So we have full circle of my geekdom comes back, and I was like, that's awesome, because I've lived that, in D&D. So
that is a veritable Ouroboros of geekery. That really is.
It is. So I just wanted to share my little geek. Oh, go ahead.
I do have one apocalypse, gaming-related apocalypse thing to point out, and that is, if I could pull this up here on my other screen here. Let's see. The nice folks over at Drive-Thru RPG actually just. Oh, hold on, I'm having a cat issue.
This again, Ben, is not uncommon.
It's like magic right there. That was fantastic.
Thank you. But pulled a 20-pound cat out of his crotch. The folks over at Drive-Thru RPG have just dropped a new product for a dead game system. Somebody, and I really should have looked this up in advance while I was sitting here listening to your Rocinante story, but I was enjoying it so much. Somebody has gone and published a new supplement to the old Game Designers Workshop game, Twilight 2000, which was came out in the 80s and was a post-apocalypse set during the end of World War III game system, and set in the twilight of civilization, set in what was their near future and now is our distant past. But somebody put out a new product for it, strangely enough. There is a product available through Drive-Thru RPG called, I believe it's the West Africa source book. There had been some talk for a while on some of the old gaming forums of people who were still, getting their nerd on for a game system that had died, with Game Designers Workshop some like 20 years earlier. People were still, fiddling around with that. And sure enough, apparently a group of them got together, and I'm not sure what the situation is as far as the rights go to the game system, but they managed to put out a new product for the game system. And it's just a little $3 PDF product that's online. But the fact that it's the first, sort of new product that has been made, and I think it's for the, some of the earlier rules editions. I think it might be a 2.2 product. In fact, I'm pulling it up right now. It's the East Africa source book. It is a second edition set of rules. It's the first product that you put out for second edition since like the mid 90s. It's the idea of a an East Africa source book, Somalia, Kenya, that sort of area of Africa. That had been sort of kicked around the forums for a number of years by various writers, and they finally got a product together. So I'm going to be purchasing it later this evening and giving it a read, and maybe I can actually give it a review. But It's out there, so
check it out.
check it out. All
All
right, that's all the nerdery I have for the moment.
Okay, cool. Cool. Yeah, let's get on to Ben before we go too far. All right. So, like I said, now we're going to start talking. Instead of talking about ourselves, we're going to talk to our actual guest, Benjamin Wallace. Again, Benjamin is the author of the Duck and Cover Adventures. He has currently 3 main novels and 1 collection of short stories. It's called the Duck and Cover Adventures, or in the Duck and Cover collection. The first book, which is how I discovered Benjamin's writing, was the Post-Apocalyptic Nomadic Warriors. Now, from my set in the description of the event, Ben takes a kind of a different approach to the apocalypse, and I found it very interesting and intrigued me to go pick it up, because it definitely takes a tongue-in-cheek look at the apocalypse and covers all the tropes that we know and love in the post-apocalyptic genre. So I'm like, you know what? Not that I don't mind my gloom and doom and grim in the apocalypse, but I was like, you know what? Let's look at something that's a little more funny and a little more lighter, and let's see how it's approached. I've read the first novel. Scott has also read the first novel, and we both have enjoyed it very much. So while we were reading it, we were working on getting Ben on the show. So first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to start asking some questions. We have a list of questions here, so we could actually have some structure. We are going to ask Ben. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Who is Benjamin Wallace, the author?
Well, again, thanks for having me on, guys. I've been writing books for quite a while, but I've been publishing for about 6 years now. And Post-Apocalyptic Manic Warriors was the first one I put out. And it's kind of the Wild West days of Kindle and Amazon. And I was lucky enough to get some readers to it, and I've kind of continued on with that series and some other books. So about 4 years ago, I kind of was able to step away from the day job a little bit and go to more of a freelance full-time author thing. And I've been doing that. That's what I do. I live in Texas right now. We're hiding from the rain. In a couple months, we'll be hiding from the sun, and gives you plenty of time to write when the weather's trying to kill you all the time. So,
both Scott and I. Well, Scott was previously from Central Florida. I am also from. I lived most of my life in Southeast Florida, and I am now in Central Florida on the coast. So, we get the weather and the hot and the humid. Absolutely.
I did Orlando last July, and man, I was surprised.
Yeah, it doesn't do itself any favors being in the middle of the peninsula.
No, it was sweaty. That's for sure.
oh yeah, I just saw. I was watching. We were eating breakfast the other day. They had the news on. They're showing the weather, like, because I'm on the coast, a little beach town called New Smyrna Beach. We're just a little bit south of Daytona, and it was showed there was like a 5-degree difference from like Orlando to where I live, and it's only like an hour's drive. You know, so I'm like, boy, I'm glad I live on the coast. You know, we're close to the beach. You know, get the breeze. It's nice.
Nice little breeze. Yeah, it makes all the difference. You know, we just had storms coming through the last couple of days. It's spring. Yeah, it's funny. We had softball size hail hit in the area the other day, and my friend's like, "You okay?" I'm like, "Wait, it's spring. This is what happens. This is just." It's March, April in Texas. It's what it does. So, but it does give me a good reason to stay inside and stay at the keyboard. And I've been just always wanted to write books, and you know, we're living in the future now, where you can just upload it and go, and it's been great. It's been a lot of fun. So, I've never taken anything too seriously, including the end of the world, and it just all fit together nicely. So,
excellent. Yeah, like I said, we're fans of the apocalypse, and you're right. It's amazing at the age we live in now, to where it used to be really hard to get something published, and with the whole thing with self-publishing, and you know, with Amazon, everything, with technology, it's like such a scary, different world than it was when we were growing up. You know,
it really is. That's one thing I've always wanted to write, humor, and it was especially humor was so difficult to get published. Like, it's so subjective. A lot of publishers wouldn't take a chance on putting many humorous books out there. You had the stand-up comics over here, about the only ones that could do a comedy book, and then you had Douglas Adams, Terry Pratchett, and Christopher Moore, and that was like about it. And they Dave Barry too, when he started writing novels. But for the longest time, it was so hard to get any kind of humor through. It's nice to see the genre of funny books kind of exploding out there.
Well, it's strange to say that because I just remember getting something from a guy. I should say a guy I know. I met Charles Strauss a couple of times. I'm not sure I can describe him as a guy I know, but he writes a series that has been relatively successful. And his thing was his editors kept wanting to diffuse the horror. He was sort of writing, horror, supernatural stuff, and his editors kept wanting him to diffuse the horror with humor, and he kept wanting to push the humor, the horror aspects of it. It was getting a different kind of pushback. Of course, his stuff is all post 2010, I guess. When were you experiencing this thing where you were getting a pushback against humor?
Well, I think it was just traditionally, like, it was hard to. There wasn't really a genre out there for it. It was there was elements of it in books, and there were some writers that were funny, but you couldn't actually publish. It's a comedy, there wasn't like a genre for books like the movie Airplane or something like that, right? It was harder, few or far between. So
yeah, exactly. Unless you're the National Lampoon doing Lord of the Rings,
exactly. Yeah,
you don't get to do that.
Yeah, and it's just with self-publishing, just every niche is now filled, or just at least can be explored, which is good. It's not just whatever the current trend is, Everyone can get their voice out there, so it's been really interesting to watch. It has changed dramatically, even in the 6 years I've been doing it. It's been every 6 months it feels like a different landscape completely. So
the Duck and Cover series, you've got 3 books out there, a collection of short stories. Could you give the audience sort of a rundown of, I don't know, the elevator pitch, maybe the back page blurb of each of those products to let them know what they're getting into with each of these books?
Yeah, sure. The Post-Apocalyptic Medic Warriors is the first one of the series, and that is you guys set it up. It's I've always loved this genre, but it just really felt like it needed to be made fun of just a little bit. Like somebody, it becomes such a stereotype. It's very much the Road Warrior, Mad Max kind of thing. There's a lone warrior comes into town. The raiders they've got a big death truck. They go around raiding the smaller villages, and there's actually in the first book there's 2 people that define themselves as the post-apocalyptic nomadic warrior. One is very much the one we expect, the scar on his face. He's rugged, he's handsome, and the other guy's kind of a doofus. And they have like an embarrassment of riches. They get to choose which one they want, and they pick the more typical one. And the big question is, did they pick the right guy to save them?
I don't want to put out any spoilers, but I have to admit that I found Logan far more believable.
Well, and I think that was the intent, right? He's he's definitely what we expect, and I just wanted to have some fun with that, with all the expectations. I get a lot of comments like, "Oh, I saw the ending coming." I'm like, "Well, I'm not trying to trick you. It wasn't, like, good for you, Nostradamus. It wasn't. It's not. I'm not trying to pull the wool over anyone's eyes. It's just playing with the expectations a little bit." But then the series goes on. We follow the character out west a little bit, and they run into one of the big things I wanted to do with this whole series is, I think as long as people are around, there'll be something worth laughing at. And I think that if anything were to happen right now, we would be really at a loss to get by. So a lot of each kind of book really does look at a different way that people have tried to carry on. And the second one, they go out west, and there's a group of that actually run into. He was a Renaissance, when he was younger, he worked at Renaissance fairs. And he said they summer out in Colorado, and that was really interesting to me. So kind of the thought was a group of them got caught out in like Silverton, Durango during the event, and started their own little kingdom out there, and kind of kept going with the medieval fantasy to a certain extent. And then
is that in the second book?
That's the second book called Knights of the Apocalypse.
Oh, I can't wait to read that one then. That's
so that one was a lot of fun to write. And
when they recreate the Middle Ages, do they remember to bring the plague?
They don't bring the plague. No, it's more of the guy that ran the turkey leg cart ended up being king. So he was also the king during the festivals. So they kind of just ran with what they knew.
Based on based on my experience at Renaissance fairs, I'm going to presume that they devolved into a cleavage-based economy. Maybe
Pretty much. And if they hadn't, I had them reopen the silver mine in Silverton. So there is a bit of that. But I also there's a classic steam train that runs between the two towns, which was just fun to play with too. So they've got a steam locomotive, and I love playing with the different areas. And then the third one's called Pursuit of the Apocalypse, and that was pretty much I wanted to do Smokey and the Bandit after the bomb. So
nice.
That was the third one, just a chase novel. Yeah. So.
Well, let me backtrack and ask you something real quick here. When we were talking about the first novel, you were talking about, because we talked about the death truck that was the big truck that was oh, and by the way, folks, we're gonna try not to spoil anything. Like we always say, we're not gonna try to spoil anything, but we may put a couple little seeds in here and there, but we won't really do a big reveal of anything. But
seeds! I see what you did there with the seeds. That was nice.
I know, huh? I see what you did. When you talked about the death truck, that was the big truck that was in there, was the inspiration for that. Did it happen to be
of the 21st century?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, or Battle Truck.
Battle Truck, 1982.
I saw it as Warlords of the 21st Century. I never saw it as Battle Truck, but that's how it's also released. So.
Definitely, that is New Zealand's second best post-apocalyptic movie.
Because I was looking it up as we were talking, and I'm like Battle Truck, and because actually I have it. Because actually we've talked about it on the show. I actually have it on the DVD rack out in the living room. So I have a fairly large post-apocalyptic movie collection. I have a big post-apocalyptic everything collection because I'm the one who's we're all obsessed with it, but I'm the one who's really obsessed with the subject matter.
I remember watching it. Like that was a great example. Like, how did they not know they were making a comedy? You had the guy from Megaforce, the guy from Cheers, and like, oh, it was just it was awesome. I watched the crap out of that one. I love that movie.
Oh, good. Then then I was like, you know what? I'll bet you that's a reference to Battle Truck. It has to be, and I was right. Yay! I figured it out.
I made it a little more outlandish even than theirs. I think I doubled up on the semi, the rig, and it was. Like I said, like ever since I want to say probably the first post-apocalyptic thing I saw was Thundar the Barbarian, and just loved the genre from there on out. It was just great.
Got to start them early.
Yeah, well, thank God Hanna-Barbera, and looking back at what they did, it's the weirdest stuff.
And if you didn't know, on the WB website, there's the WB archives. They actually have. They basically print on-demand DVDs for a lot of out-of-print stuff that was never in print. They have Thundar the Barbarian on DVD, just so you know.
I'll be going to pick it up. I gotta introduce the kids to it.
I when I first saw it, I have it again. It's sitting on the shelf out there. So, so definitely, I was like, I knew it had to be Battle Truck. Yeah, I know you're not trying to be deep with it, but it was pretty. If you know the subject matter, it stood out, and then who. And then, of course, the leader of the truck reminded me of the actor's name. Scott, is it Michael Ironsides? Is that who I'm thinking?
Well, yeah. No, I'm not saying that I couldn't hear Michael Ironsides' voice.
Yeah.
Every time the Major opened his mouth, but I could hear Michael Ironsides' voice. I just went straight to Michael Ironsides. Not the least of which because he had a eye patch on in Turbo Kid. So. I sort of defaulted to that,
He'd be good. I always saw Chuck Norris. I was going to try and convince him to do it, but
no,
got the opportunity.
It's so much better if it's Chuck Norris.
So it wasn't Michael Ironsides, because when I read that, I saw in my head.
He was Metal Storm, right? Like, he was the '80s villain. It was fantastic. Yeah. He would fit just as well. So he'd be just as good. I've always, a lot of people do ask, like, who would you see in this role? And I've really tried never to. I don't see it too much. But somebody said Chuck Norris as the guy in the truck, and I'm like, oh yeah, that would be perfect. So never since then I've seen
we're gonna vote for Michael Ironsides. I'm sorry, we have to disagree with you.
I would be fine with him too. He's fantastic.
I'm not saying that. I heard Michael Ironsides the other time, but I would love to see Chuck Norris do that. only because I worry that Chuck Norris at this stage in his life has probably caught the same disease that that Carradine had back when they did Lone Wolf McQuade. Do you know that story about Chuck Norris and David Carradine and Lone Wolf McQuade, where apparently David Carradine had it in his contract that he couldn't lose a fight to Chuck Norris?
Oh.
And he couldn't lose a fight to Chuck Norris. He couldn't shoot the Barbara Carrera. I think it was Barbara Carrera. And the heroine, and he wouldn't die in the movie. So they just shot everything out of sequence so that he'd shoot Barbara Carrera. He would lose the fight to Chuck Norris, and he'd get blown up.
And that got by the contract, huh?
Yeah, they shot. They just I don't know how they got past the contract. I mean, they never made him shoot those scenes, but then they edited it together so he blew up. And I don't know. I worry that Chuck may be at a stage of his career where he would not.
He wouldn't play the villain, maybe.
He wouldn't want to play the villain. I don't know why anyone wouldn't time in their career, just to throw everyone's assumptions under the bus or under the death truck, as the case may be. But I would hope he would agree to it. For God's sakes, who doesn't want to be the guy with the eye patch and the bear scratches and the kukri? Exactly. The handmade kukri with the lead pommel, which the weapon geek in me immediately went, oh, that's good. That's a really good idea.
Love the kukri, yeah.
So to circle back, because Ben had left off with Pursuit of the Apocalypse, and that just left him to give us an overview of the Tales of the Apocalypse.
Yes.
So Tales of the Apocalypse, let's say a lot of people, it's been great. Like a lot of people really like the stories, and they write me, when's the next one, when's the next one? And I wanted to put something out to kind of answer that, but I wasn't ready to write the fourth book just yet. So I had written a couple short stories that were in and around the Duck and Cover universe. And so I wrote a few more to give it kind of a book's worth. And I think it's 13 different short stories. So it features on it features a lot of the characters and some of the minor characters from the books. There's a couple stories about the librarian. There's one where he goes to the flooded New Orleans to kind of rescue a kid. Just kind of a miscellaneous adventure to a certain extent. But then there's I wrote a story called Gone to the Dogs, which was about a beagle and a Great Dane. They were kind of, when I apocalypsed the earth or whatever, I wanted that overgrown jungle from The Last of Us and Thundar the Barbarian, but I also wanted the wasteland from Mad Max. And so I kind of hit them with everything. And so there was one area where it was more of a plague, germ bomb kind of thing, and it killed all the people, but it left these two dogs alive, and they're stuck in the home with their owner, and it's kind of like if you guys ever saw Stephen King's Cat's Eye, like they're kind of the connecting thread throughout this collection of short stories as these two dogs kind of explore the apocalypse. But I had a lot of fun with that one because it wasn't tied to the bigger story directly, but like there's one character in Knights of the Apocalypse. He talks about before the apocalypse, he was in a band, and he played bass in a band. So his band actually survived the apocalypse, and they were the last band of the apocalypse, and they were a cover band, and they were in between gigs when everything hit. So they are the greatest band on earth because they are the only band on earth. So they decide they can stop playing covers and start playing original music because people have to listen to them. They're the only ones left. So it's stuff like that. Just kind of some of them are silly, some of them are more action packed, but it explores some of the sillier aspects of it. So, but it was a lot of fun to write. So
no, and that's great. Like I said, with everything out there, with the last 10 years, the oversaturation of zombie story apocalypses, and me and Scott tend to be a little more old school when it comes to our apocalypse stories. I tend, like, everything we cover, people like, you're gonna cover any modern stories? I'm like, well, we're going to talk about the stuff that we grew up with and read and loved, from the 70s, 80s and stuff like that. So then again, like I said, when I saw your books, I'm like, Well, it's modern, a little more modern, so people could say we can't say that we haven't covered anything more modern. And again, I like the idea of the humor approach to it because it's different. It's like I don't know if anybody else has done that before, really.
It feels very throwback to me, though. I mean, you're talking about, yes, it's modernly written, but there is a style and there is an approach to some of this that is a throwback to some of those. I mean, it feels like stylistically it's a throwback to the stuff from our childhoods, not the modern.
Well, I didn't mean modern as in the style. I just mean that like it was written in the last 5 years as opposed to, oh, let's cover this book that was written 45 years ago that you won't be able to find or read,
Yeah. Up next week, Time Machine by H.G. Wells. Yeah. No, it's it's definitely, like you say, Scott, it's throwback. It's what I grew up with too, right? I'm a child of the 80s as well. Like I say, it was Thundar, it was The Warrior, it was I saw one I remember watching. I can't find again. It was tough. Warriors of the Wasteland. Oh my God, it was horrible. I got to find that again. It was so bad. They had saw blades on their cars, and all the cars were doom buggies. And I haven't been able to track that one down. And it must have been like a Channel 27 afternoon movie one day.
What was it called again?
Warriors of the Wasteland. And it was it had to be Roger Corman or something worse. Like it was. It wasn't even like Canon Films quality. It was bad.
1983. Where's the Wasteland?
Any chance Sid Haig's in that?
Oh God! I remember the kid with the slingshot and the guy with the bow. Yeah.
That was bad. I probably saw it in 85. So 84, 85.
Well, the guy with the bow is Fred Williamson.
Oh, Fred Williamson. Oh, jeez. Okay, there's royalty in this movie.
Yes.
Let's be honest.
It
was such a great time for cinema.
Didn't you meet Fred Williamson at Gen Con, Jared?
No, that was Ken Foray, sir.
No, the football player.
Oh, no, I don't think so. It's Ken Foray I met. I don't think I met Fred Williamson.
Super Bowl ring?
No. It must have been another Jared Wallace. I don't know.
Okay, okay, never mind.
But all right, cool. So all right, then we were kind of touching on it a little bit, but Benjamin, what was your inspiration to create the series? I mean, I think we kind of touched on it a little bit. Let's get the official answer.
Well, yeah, the official. I wanted to write the funny post-apocalyptic story for a long time, and it just was that. I grew up watching. Say from Thundar, Warlords of the 21st Century, of course, all the Mad Max movies. I love the genre, and it was just even Postman. I mean, maybe the only person who likes that movie. Like I enjoyed that. It just there's something. It's the genre is so interesting, and like the whole wish fulfillment aspect. Like I've got the whole world. It's such a playground, no rules, all that. But it was just so ripe for humor, and I hadn't seen anyone take advantage of that yet. Really, not on purpose. Like I mean, like obviously there's so many bad ones out there, but
yeah,
like I don't think anyone. It's always been a guilty pleasure of mine, and I think everybody's like that. They watch it, they just enjoy it's more the thinking you do after the movie than the movie itself. So it was something I always wanted to do, and it was say once kind of the self-publishing opened itself up, I figured, I'll just stick it out there and see what happens, and that's been I've written several series, and that's been the one that kind of has sustained the most and took off the most. I did a kind of a fun homage parody to the kind of Doc Savage pulps with the 1930s 40s hero, and but people keep coming back to the post-apocalyptic one. That's the one they always want more of, and you talk about beating that dead horse, and I don't know if you can beat it enough for some folks. Like they want more and more.
I considering the number of post-apocalyptic books in this bookshelf over here to my right, I'm not really going to complain too much about more post-apocalyptic material being added. Although, admittedly, 1930s, 1940s pulp Doc Savage punching Nazis off of Zeppelins, that's also in my wheelhouse. So I'm gonna go look those up.
Well, The Bulletproof Adventures of Damien Stockwell. And actually in the second book, the Nazis and the ninjas have teamed up against him. So
all the N words on one side.
Tesla's in there too. So,
not all the N words, but close to the that came out sounding wrong. But yes, clearly Nazis and ninjas together again.
Oh yeah.
Great.
Yeah, it's very over the top. Yeah, very over the top.
Yeah, I'd have to say that Scott's love for either pulp or the post-apocalypse. I think they kind of run neck and neck, and sometimes one more than the other. If he had to love something more than the apocalypse, pulp would be Scott's thing.
Pulp. Yeah. Anytime you punch a Nazi off a Zeppelin into a dinosaur, I'm right. I'm there. I think that's.
I think Ben's going to steal that for his next novel.
There's dinosaurs in it, but no Nazis. Yeah, it's
okay.
It's a robot dinosaur, but that counts, right?
That still counts. Does it?
Yeah.
Was it invented in a lab that has a big machine with electricity that goes zzz? Because then.
How else would you invent a robot dinosaur? I don't know another way.
There's going to be giant vacuum tubes in a machine that goes zzz.
It's a machine that goes bing. Yes, and it. All right, so cool. So that's what inspired you, and I think we kind of covered our next question as well, which is the why the post-apocalyptic thing. So I think we've covered that one well already. So we're gonna kind of skip over that. But folks, we were gonna ask him why the post-apocalyptic thing, and he's made it clear that Benjamin Wallace is a friend of the apocalypse, just like Scott and I. So yeah. I think that is the answer. So
I'll tell you, I'd love to hear that you guys have read it. And one thing is, I wanted to poke fun at the genre, but I didn't want to. I love it. Yeah. I love it. I don't want to. Anyone that's truly a fan of the genre, I didn't want to offend or step on any toes, because it's not something that I wasn't out there to wreck it. It was really something I really enjoyed playing with. I loved it. I just wanted to see it kind of go on and just take it in different slants. So I'm glad to see fans of it, that the genre itself really do enjoy it.
Well, certainly it's a genre where it's rife if somebody wanted to take a wrecking ball to it and just sort of mean-spiritedly smash all these terrible tropes that we've come to expect. Yes, they could certainly do that, but no, it was clearly all very much a very loving, maybe you mussed the genre's hair a little bit. You didn't kick it. Yeah. you didn't stomp it in a gutter, and kick its teeth
out. Do that.
No.
Yeah.
The only time
it can't end like this, Scott. But
I've never seen. I haven't seen a really good comedy set in the apocalypse for about 40 years. The closest thing I can think of is a guy named Ron Goulart, the sci-fi writer, wrote a book called After Things Fall Apart, which was set in California during a post-apocalyptic sort of world. But that didn't spoof the post-apocalyptic genre. It spoofed California. It was all about making fun of 1970s California culture. And it used the post-apocalyptic setting to do that, but it wasn't about acknowledging the sort of humor that comes out of this genre that we've grown so attached to.
Let me ask you a random question, Ben, because we were talking about some books and novels and movies and stuff like that. If you were to say you had a favorite, or at least in your one of your favorite top 5 post-apocalyptic novels, what would be one of your favorite post-apocalyptic books?
Yes,
that is. I joked earlier about Time Machine, but that's got to be the classic, right? Like going forward to the Morlocks and the Eloi was like that's where it was all born. Like I think that's got to be up there as far as the serious ones. But I love as bad as they are. I love like the Deathlands and the
yes I love Ben.
Just so I was in Brazil for a little while and feeling very out of place, and I went to the bookstore and they had 2-foot section of English books, and they actually had the Taoist Run too. It was that was the Deathlands. It was the Dallas Run. I'm like, wait,
the Dallas Run? Are you? Oh, no, hold on. What's let the Apocalypse Nerd come out here? Are you sure you're not talking about the End World series?
Deathlands and End World both, but yeah, the End World was the Dallas. So I picked up. They had Dallas run there, and that was like, I got that in a big Budweiser and just sat in a hammock and felt like an American. It was fantastic.
Nice.
But this what I remember looking into those. That was great. Like at the time, they were the #1 audiobook in the country, and it was the truck drivers were driving the market for that, and I thought that was great because, like, man, every time I'm on the road real late, these guys are listening to this, thinking, listening to apocalyptic fiction as they're driving right behind me. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I stop in because I go back to South Florida sometimes. It's a few-hour drive, and we stop at like Flying J's and those like truck stop places. And I've seen the Deathlands audiobooks. Oh, yeah. There, I really want to kind of pick them up to listen to them, but they're so freaking expensive. I'm like, I can't justify this. It's way too costly.
They're still easier to get than the old books. I had a fair-sized run of Deathlands, and I do not know how they got out of my collection, but they did. And now trying to go back and find things like Red Equinox and Red Holocaust and
Pilgrimage to Pilgrimage to Hell, the first one.
Yeah, or Crater
That's
Lake.
the one I know I've got a copy of that here somewhere.
Pilgrimage to Hell, 1986. I was visiting my cousins in New York, and we were in the mall, and it was a summer of '86. And I remember going into a bookstore and just randomly looking at the shelves in that section and seeing, oh, Pilgrimage to Hell, Deathlands. What is this book? And buying it like right after it came out, and falling in love with it ever since. But
I got a little sniff of War Wag 1 off the truck.
That as well, yeah.
There was a little Warlords of the 21st Century, but I definitely got a sniff of War Wag 1 off of that as well.
That's something, and the armored semi is not that unique.
Yeah. So. But I also want to point out to the people, the listeners here, is that yet again I've shown again my geek cred here, post-apocalyptic geek cred, by identifying the
End World.
My God, I just forgot. I just said
geek cred removed.
Well, the End World was everyone was a different city, right? It was like Dallas Run and this and that.
It was. He said Dallas Run. I'm like, no, that's the End World series with Blade. The guy's always on the cover. He's this big, giant, buff guy with just a vest on. He's got a big, giant Bowie knife.
Yeah.
I gotta tell you, this is bad news. Here's how far behind you guys are. Sure, I read a bunch of Deathlands. I don't think I've ever read End World.
I probably have like a section about this big of End World. I probably read into like the 20s on those. But Deathlands, yes, Deathlands. And it comes to a series, Ben. That's what we've talked about. That is my absolute favorite.
Those just define the genre to me, really. Like those are that was when it was boiled down from. It was used for so long as just like social criticism, like now forget social criticism, big knives, and like that was, and that's what was great about that, and that's what I think needed a little bit of lampooning, was more of that kind of thing. So
definitely. Oh, cool. Okay. I'm so glad we're all on the same page. This is awesome. I'm really enjoying this. All right. So we talked about why the post. Again, I think our next question, I think we've kind of covered it yet again, because, we just like to talk, was we wanted to ask you, it's like, what did you see missing from other post-apocalyptic books that these books provide?
It was just a little bit of self-awareness. Like, it was like that was a joke and you guys missed it. Here it is. Michael Beck, come on. It was a comedy. And his name was Hunter. Like, it just, and Blade and all that. Like, it's just, you guys, like, let's just poke a little fun at it, that kind of thing. So, and again, I think anytime there's people around, there's something worth laughing at. And I wanted to see in my own imagination, like, how would people get by without everything today? But at the same time, it was like so much there's so much in this world. It's so plentiful. Like, are we really going to be wearing tires and deer skins, or there was a Gap distribution center that probably got missed, and there's a whole bunch of shirts ready for everybody, right? Like, how many trillions of rounds of ammunition are stockpiled in this country in different places. We're really going to be down to, a tire iron or a fender on the end of a stick. Like, he just.
Well, apparently, and I think we discussed this when we talked about fashion in the apocalypse. Was really about clothing and armor. That show is that apparently every clothing chain in the world got blown up, and the only thing that was left was fetish clothing stores.
Pretty much, and Pirelli factories. Yeah, I think that's it. Like, it's,
sporting goods stores for the
shoulder pads, football pads,
and the hockey helmet, and then a leather thong with studs on it. That's your standard. That's your standard wear in the apocalypse. The best post-apocalyptic clothing story, I think, has to come from the Showtime series Jeremiah, where they're in the
I know where you're going.
Yeah, where they're dealing with a plague that killed everybody off who'd gone through puberty. So everyone under 12 is alive. Everybody over 12 is dead. It's 15 years later. Everyone's just getting up to be 30, and they're trying to rebuild the world. They're trying to, the libraries are there. Most of them knew how to read. So the world is starting to get back together again, but there keeps being this sort of like sign that there's somebody else out there in the world who's got their shit a lot more together. And at one point, they find an assassin who's been killed, and he doesn't have any food on him. He doesn't have a backpack. His boots aren't that worn out, and, he's got this great rifle, but there's no sign of where he came from. Has no personal effects. And they're trying to figure out from him who this guy is. And then, at one point they realize, oh, look, he's wearing underwear. Something we haven't seen in 10 years, because all the underwear wore out. It was one of the first things to wear out was underwear, and everyone just wore their denim clothes or whatever. And not only is he wearing underwear, he's wearing freshly laundered underwear, which means that the bad guys apparently have enough disposable resources in their plan to take over the post-apocalyptic world that they can afford to take the time to clean their underwear. And that moment was like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
We're in a lot of
that's
trouble.
A story, like a plot point. Like clean underwear became like a whole episode.
Yeah, it's like, they can make clean underwear. We're in a lot of fucking trouble. I mean, holy shit.
And again, I think this is yet another thing that Benjamin should work into his future novels, underwear. Have you talked about underwear in any of the other stories?
There we go.
Specifically, but yeah, it might pop up now.
Awesome. See, we're helping. We're helping.
I love the idea that he's like, look, there's 97% of the population went away. There's a lot of closets. There's just a lot of closets. You don't even have to go to the factory outlet. There's just closets. Go get some clothes. If you're not wearing old clothes just 7 years after the apocalypse, you're clearly making a fashion or a political statement about how rustic you are. And I thought that was a great thing to drop in about, if they're sewing their own clothes, they're clearly some, douchebags who want to make a point about how independent they are and how they're not relying on the terrible technology of the old world. Yeah, okay.
All right, then go ahead.
That's like post-apocalyptic hipsters.
Yeah. we were wearing leather chaps before leather chaps were cool, but
excuse me.
Cat. All right, so let's move down to the next one, which again I think we've covered a lot of this one already. Is what are your influences and inspirations for your writing?
The writing itself, it's. I think it's more. I get asked that all the time, of course, and it's like I think the inspiration, at least for my humor, I grew up at the same time you guys did, and it was more the movies than it is, at least any kind of book for the humor style kind of thing. It was like I love the post-apocalyptic genre. I just watched a Mega Man again the other day. That was a fantastic one. Like talk about the society, like, oh no, things are bad. Like that was the family there. But like Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid has got to be one of my favorite movies, and just the airplanes, Johnny Dangerously, all that. So I never try to go too silly, and I may miss and go too silly with some of the stuff. But so it's not as zany or wacky as the airplanes and the Naked Guns out there, but somewhere in the middle between that and that's the kind of humor I like. And then it's the book that really, when I was younger, that I picked up, it was like, oh wait, writing can be fun, was Steve Martin's The Cruel Shoes. It was full of nonsense, but that was the one where like, oh wait, writing doesn't have to be terribly boring. And then you get to even Vonnegut or Heller, and you're like, oh wait, funny writing can also be respected. That was kind of the interesting thing. So I'm not going for the respect so much. I'm going for the laughs. I'm going for the fun. I like the action-packed kind of stuff. Like my other series are, it's the one I just finished is the sequel to a book called Junkers, where it's the future. Yes. Yeah, it's the near future, and robots have turned on us, but we know they're going to do that. All movies and books have taught us that robots will eventually kill us, so we're prepared for it. And it's worth taking that chance that a robot will possibly kill you if you don't have to do your own dishes. And society's kind of agreed, like, no, this is potential death's better than folding our sheets. So the robot companies have pretty fantastic warranties that cover that. But if your robot is out of warranty and trying to kill you, you have to call kind of the blue-collar junkers. These are guys that go out and they'll stop the menacing robot if it's not covered. So again, just kind of action-packed but silly. I had a lot of fun with all the different robots in there because there's a robot for just about everything.
Thank God they're single mission robots. They're not multi-mission robots.
Not at all.
There's just one to clip the hedges. There's just one to vacuum the floor.
I've got a paper collator in there that goes nuts. So yeah, there's
wouldn't you? I mean,
it's also, I hate to say, I don't really have too much to say on society or anything like that, but it is like, a corporation's not going to make a multi-purpose robot if they can make a 3-hole punch and a paper collator. They're going to have 2 different product lines. And a lot of the fun I had in that was I've spent 20 years in advertising and marketing too. So there's a lot of that in me, and I had a lot of fun with the robots and the different competing robot companies and brand names and taglines and all the kind of stuff on how they might sell the Mr. Barista coffee drone that kind of flies around the office and fills up your coffee mug when it's empty. So I'm just having fun. Like that's my whole point with these, with all the books.
Well, Elton Brown would be proud of you about having these single task robots because Elton Brown, he did all the cooking shows, Good Eats and stuff like that in the past. His thing was always like, I don't like multitaskers. No multitaskers. single purpose tools. Don't have it be something. So
if it dices, it better not slice, right?
Exactly.
All I'm saying is that the United States Air Force could take that lesson to heart too.
Yeah, right. And then, I like that you said about with you're talking about with the humor in it is you try not to be too silly and over the top, but try to maybe funny, because I notice like sometimes it's I guess very English. Sometimes it's that kind of matter of the humor that I found was sometimes just very matter of fact, very dry, just kind of there, and it's funny.
You snuck up on me with a couple of lines about you start down this rabbit hole about preaching about things and possessions, and they those can't help you. You can't eat yourself. Friends are what you need. You need friends and companions. Close friends, because when it comes to a pinch, a cell phone is or a plasma screen TV is not going to feed you, but you can always eat a close.
You can always eat your friends. Yeah.
Yeah. And what was best about that line is that it actually ended up on the next page. I don't know if that was part of your layout plan, but
that worked out great.
And I flipped the page. But you can always eat a close friend, and I'm like, son of a bitch, that's magical.
I had no idea it broke like that. That's perfect.
So
and I will say I like the well, I don't want to ruin it. I liked the bears in the story too.
The bears have been very popular. Yeah,
both kinds of bears.
Both kinds of bears. Just how you talk about like just again the weird tropes of like super intelligent bears, because then it's like, okay, is he talking about like mutated smart bears, or are you talking about?
Is he talking about Hero's Journey? Wasn't Hero's Journey? Wasn't that the one that had the telepathic bear in it?
with Sterling E. Lancer. Hero's Journey or Hyro's Journey, and then the Unforsaken Hyro. Yes, he had the character was a telepath, and he had the Morse, his writing moose from Canada, but I don't know if it was related to that. No, Hyro's Journey, Unforsaken Hyro, very good books.
I haven't read anything with a magical moose in it. That sounds fantastic. I haven't read that one.
Yes, it does. It has a magical moose. It goddamn does have a magical moose.
It was called they called it a Morse in the book. It was his Morse. So, all right, cool. So let's continue to tick down the list. Simple question: how long does it take you to write one of these books?
The duck and covers always seem to take about 3 months, no matter how hard I try to get through them faster. And that's, I think, a big part of that is, I think one of the things you were talking about too was anything gets in the way, and it is like at this point, 3 books in, 4 including the short stories, there's a lot of people waiting for that next book. That's the pressure gets on you. When I first wrote it, it was the first book I put out there, so there was no pressure at all, and it was just silly and me just going, this might work, and putting it out there. And now there's so many people like, I've been warned about a few things, like this better not happen, and this better happen, and they of course conflict. So it's it may take a little longer to write this next one, but I'm looking forward to it.
Nice for the fans to set you up with a Kobayashi Maru.
They're not shy. They're not shy at all anymore. And that there is it better not be this thing, like, oh, he better do this. Like, yeah, well, it can't be both. So
I would get obstinate. I'd be like, oh, I can't I? Well, who's the master of this domain?
Well, that's
I tried to flex that muscle at the end of the 3rd book, and if you guys get there, you'll see.
Okay.
You can imagine imagine the mail I got for that one. So
that's the thing I find is it's kind of like the Kickstarter syndrome. I'm sure you're familiar with Kickstarter. I follow these Kickstarters, and then I see like the people who are backing it, like trying to dictate to the person who created the project that you should be doing A, B, and C, and why are you adding this, and why are you adding that, and why are you doing this? And usually I'll pop in, I'm like, whoa, time out. If you don't like what they're doing, you don't have to back it, because they've laid out for you what they're doing, not what Bobby Backer wants to do. You know what? If you want all that, then do your own damn Kickstarter, make your own whatever it is.
It's funny. I've actually been really lucky. The readers I have been very supportive, and that's just, I think, the nature of social media, right? Like all of a sudden we all have a say and we all have that connection. But I love it. I mean, they've been fantastic, and they joke like it better be out soon, but they know, I'm pretty open. They know I've got 3 kids. It's like you say, life happens, right? So things slow you down. Summer's coming up. I don't get much done during the summer at all because they're here all day. So, but it's you'll lose a few people if it's. But there's others that are happy. So
if people are going to be that upset because somehow they didn't get to democratically dictate to the artist how to do their art, you're going to lose them anyways. Just do what you feel is right, and you're going to get the fans. They'll stick to you because they like what you're doing.
Yeah, it's been good. They've been fantastic, very supportive. So.
Well, see, Ben's a lot nicer than I am, because a lot of times I get a lot of people with this podcast. They start trying to tell me, "Oh, yeah, they're not, they did a really shitty job at critiquing that film, and they blah blah blah." And I'll go back and it's like, "Listen, dude, I never said I was a fucking film critic. I just do this for fun. It's like, shut the fuck up. I don't care. And I tell people,
it is this weird thing about social media where this connection, this seemingly close connection with people who are thousands of miles away, that somehow it's like this democratization of the creative process, when the only person you can be in there in front of that keyboard is you. And believe me, considering what a bang up job I'm doing getting through my writing projects, I will note that all the people who are complaining about it being late are not there helping. They're not there making suggestions, although I will admit that there have been times that people have suggested things, and I'm like, well, that's a ridiculous idea, and then I just typed it. Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the nice thing about this is everyone that started this journey with me started with a book called Post-Apocalyptic Nomadic Warriors. So all the the kind of, everyone's in on the style and in the sense of humor, so they're not too serious when they end all their emails with "or else." Like I know they're not.
Well,
Okay,
that's
good point.
Well, yeah, no, and that's great because, like I said, we get people who are just like so like with us, and I'm just like, and I listen. I'm like, listen, dude, f you, man. I don't care. It's like I'm not getting paid for this, and I don't have to listen to you. I'm very brusque with these people. I'm like, listen, if you don't like what I'm saying and you think you could do a better job, go start your own podcast because I'll give it a listen. I don't care.
Jared's people skills is why our audience, ranks into the dozens and dozens of listeners.
Sir, we have over 455 followers on YouTube now, sir. Okay.
455. Another question about readers. Have people followed you from one genre to another? That is to say, do you have any way of tracking through, the Amazon sales? Whether, that's kind of a deep question. Whether people have followed you from one genre to another because they're,
It has. I started kind of, let's say the post-apocalyptic one was the first one I put out, but I had another book that I had worked on before earlier, and it was more of just it's called Tortugas Rising, and it was I also enjoy like
pirates.
Cussler. No, it's not actually. It's like a Clive Cussler kind of adventure.
Okay, yes.
And for the same reason I love post-apocalyptic stuff, like I love reading it, but like it's a joke. Like something like every time, Dirk, really? Like you love the characters, but there's just so many tropes about it. So I wanted to see like every character, every book was, oh, thank God he's a former SEAL. Oh, it's a good thing he happened to be an assassin. Oh, yes, of course he can fly a helicopter. So I wanted to drop two very normal people into like a Cussler-esque scaled adventure. And
where the escape helicopter is right there where they can escape from the oil rig, and they're like, well, you can fly it, right? What about you? No.
Yeah,
why would I?
There is that scene. They come across a helicopter like,
God.
We could end this right now, but we're screwed because we're nobody, so there was a lot of that. So, and that was I was definitely finding my style at that point. And then the third thing I put out was a story. It was a short story called "Dumb White Husband versus the Grocery Store." And initially that found more readers than anything else, and it was just kind of it was me going to the grocery store and how I don't handle that very well, and fuck the self-checkout lane and all this, and so I had people coming in from like the everyday slice of life, and then I'm trying to go post-apocalyptic, and a lot of them have thankfully stuck with me this whole time through. I did because I did a few more of those Dumb White Husband stories. There was one, it was Dumb White Husband versus Santa, which is Christmas Tale, Halloween, and then the next one I did was Dumb White Husband versus Zombies. I had to do the zombie thing. This was 4 years ago. It was the biggest thing out there. So I had these three suburbanite dads kind of going up against the zombies, and with that one, I think I was able to pull the Dumb White Husband fans into my action adventure. But the biggest crossover I see is they go from the Duck and Cover series into the Junkers robot science fiction kind of thing. So,
I was going to say that anyone who's befuddled by a grocery store is going to appreciate the simplicity of an apocalyptic landscape.
I think so. It was very complicated in that grocery store. And that one was it was amazing to me because I had the places that popped up that people were like, oh, I've read that. Like, what, you've read that? Like, how did it just, I think it was the title at the time. So I haven't touched that series in a while. I've been focusing more on the Duck and Cover and the one I just finished. I'm still going through the document, finding all the typos at this point. Was the second book in the Junkers series. So that should be out in the next, hopefully the next month.
Can you, speaking of next week's out in the series, can you give any kind of a hint about the fourth book in the Duck and Cover series?
Yeah, so you guys have read the first one.
Mm-hmm.
The events of the first one, it's surprising to me. I thought I was going to do each one a standalone adventure, but they've all they've run, there's kind of an ongoing story. And the events of the first book are what drive the rest of it. They're kind of on the run in the second book. he has to said it was my version of Cannonball Run or Smoking the Bandit in the Apocalypse for the third book. And the new book I've just released, the title was Revenge of the Apocalypse. So it's pretty much he's out for revenge. And
I'm very happy with that title.
I've been waiting for this one.
I'm very happy with that title. After having put up with Johnson's Blank in the Ashes series.
Oh, don't get started with that one.
Revenge of the Apocalypse is like
Revenge of the Apocalypse.
I have no trouble seeing that on a bookshelf, in a store. Absolutely not. That makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah. So this is the revenge tale. That's what this one's going to be. So it should be a lot of fun. Like I say, it's been I've been thinking about it it's probably been about a year since I released the third book. So trying to plan that next one. It's been probably about a solid year of thinking it through.
I don't know if it's a spoiler, but I'm also going to say best knife fight ever. At the climactic knife fight ever.
Good.
Yeah, and the first one, best climactic knife fight ever. Kudos.
Oh, thank you.
That is the way that shit should go every time.
It's really tricky trying to balance that the action versus the comedy and trying to blend it all together. So it's interesting over the last couple probably the last year and a half. A lot of people have been. It's flattering. Like they'll say, "Hey, this reminds me of Terry Pratchett. This reminds me of Hitchhiker's Guide," and I absolutely I deny that. Like that's just too flattering. But I think it's also a lot of people have. There's a limited amount of funny authors to kind of compare anyone to. If you read something and it makes you laugh, there hasn't been that many out there. So a lot of people I think read it looking more for the humor, less for the action adventure. But I still really try to keep the action and adventure real and the comedy kind of surprising. Hopefully,
Who was the was it Pratchett? Who did the myth novels? That was
Aspirin. Robert Aspirin.
Robert Aspirin. That was another. Because when we were talking about comedy, did you ever read any of the myth novels, Ben?
Was it the Myth Adventures or something?
Yes.
No, someone had brought his name up the other day, but I hadn't had a chance to read any of them yet. So
yeah, that's a series of they kind of they look at all the tropes of fantasy novels.
God. Yeah, that's exactly what it was. Dismantled the fantasy novel.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm gonna check those out. Because I like the Discworld novels. Kind of the same thing, playing with the fantasy bit. So, but again, I think it's a limited thing. But a lot of people have said, even reviews, like, "Oh, this is if Terry Pratchett wrote about the apocalypse." And I really like his stuff, but it gets a little zanier. It's that British stuff. So maybe trying to go too zany.
Yeah, I think maybe the myth novels may be a little closer comparison. Maybe.
I'll check those out.
Yeah,
I think
definitely worth your time.
And then, all right, so let's run down the last two questions here so we can start wrapping up here. But again, we may have covered this. Well, we know that you don't write a lot during the summer because the kids are out. What challenges do you encounter when writing your books? Besides your three children.
I'm going to put most of it on them,
and the grocery store.
And the grocery store, man. It's now that they've got that pickup, it's fantastic. I haven't been in a grocery store in months. It's balancing a lot of things. I still do a fair amount of freelance work. So, and it is as much as you like to think. I think I'm on my 13th book. Like I've got it down. I've got a system. I've got a pattern. And no, you don't. It's just there's still a matter of getting into it and getting to do it. And the more readers you've got, the more you think, oh, I better make sure this one's just better than the last one. So, but the other thing too is I got a lot of, I love the duck and cover books. I love writing those. I've got quite a few planned, but I got a lot of other ideas too. Like I think for you guys, I mentioned you, right? There's having an idea is not the problem. It's the time is to get it done. So there's a lot of other stuff I want to make fun of that I haven't had a chance to yet. So those ideas are always kind of coming in. I'm trying to right now handle that by putting more short stories out there. I've always liked them. It's just as far as for a writer goes, it's nice to have completed something. even if it's a short 20, 30-page story or whatever. I put one out the other day. It was about the runner returning from the Battle of Marathon and fully expecting to go into the history books for his run, and then Herodotus going like, hold on, I don't know if it's really noteworthy, you know? And so it's this whole argument between the runner and Herodotus. How do I get in the history books, you know? So it's stupid. It's just, it's a dumb, fun little story. I wrote it in a day, and it was just something different, a nice little break for it. So I think I've started to build those breaks in a little more. But that's one of the challenges is when you're working on one series is to get a little variety in there, even for yourself. So,
yipes. There may be a lot more truth in that I am comfortable accepting, because I'm buried in a couple of projects where I can't see the end of them. And I'm thinking, you know, I would, just as a creative form of procrastination, writing something else might at least get some writing done, as opposed to, yeah.
It really makes a difference just to say, hey, I finished something. And like this one's like 15 pages.
Yeah.
You know, it was an afternoon. I had, when I first got started, there was an author, I'm trying to remember his name now. J.A. Conrad was one of the first kind of big self-publishing names. And he was a mid-list author, and then he self-published and saw all the success and was kind of guiding people through the process when I first started. And he put out a challenge, like, if you can write, make a cover, and put a short story on Amazon in 8 hours, I'll promote it on your page. He'd promote it on his page. So I wrote a little story called Alternate Realty, and it was like maybe 10 or 15 pages. And the idea was, it was more like make room, right? Like, it was overpopulation, and Earth had filled up. So the only place to go buy an affordable home now was an alternate dimension, parallel dimension. So that's how we had used dimensional technology, was for real estate. And it was a couple going to go see a new home, and the wife had a problem with the dinosaurs, right? like, well, not every house is gonna be perfect. Well, but it's the dinosaurs, Ted. We can't do the dinosaurs. So, but over the course of the last couple of years, people,
that's hilarious. I love that idea.
They jump in, they read it. It's real short. They like it. It's a quick little smile. It's a great for a commute or whatever. But at the same time, it was like, man, it felt really good to put that down there and get that out there. So I'm trying to go back to that, just like these quick little silly stories that are good for me. And they say they do move along the bigger book too, just because it's
that title's going to be stuck in my goddamn head now. I mean, I'm so annoyed at how brilliant that is. I mean, it makes me hate you just a little bit. It really does. Alternate Realty, God.
Alternate Realty, yeah. It was fun. It was a quick cover. My wife's an art director. She did it for me. It's a toy dinosaur with a for sale sign out front. Like, it was just fun. It was a blast to write, and just again, like a quick little something. You know, like it's funny because like even the books I write aren't very long, but the way I look at it is like you don't see a 2-hour comedy either. You know, it's like they've got to be. It's the 90-minute comedy. It's the formula that's always worked. It can't go too long, and you can stretch a joke till it dies. And
no, that's the key to all comedy is brevity.
Yeah.
You cannot, and frankly, you know, for some of the stuff that I work on, mostly I work in horror, and you know, I don't understand. Horror novels sort of escape me because I just don't understand how you keep that going for that many pages. You know, short story is always the thing that works for me better because, well, you know, you get in, you make your point, you succeed in your mission, and you move on to the next one.
Yeah. It's extremely satisfying, I think, as a reader, but even as a writer, it's just like good to, hey, I got just writing the end on something feels so good. If it doesn't matter how long it is, you know. So.
Well, we're down to the most important question.
Yes, the very most important question of this entire show is, where can our listeners and viewers get your novels?
The print versions are available just about everywhere online, and then most of my books are right now exclusive to Amazon, so they can go there. But the best place to kind of learn more and see everything I've done is BenjaminWallaceBooks.com. And BenjaminWallaceBooks.com. Okay. Yep, BenjaminWallaceBooks.com, and got everything up there. We're brand spanking new website as of. Let's see, the power went out Tuesday when we were transferring that over. So we had to rebuild the whole thing Tuesday morning. A damn tornado came through and right in the middle of a backup. So Yeah, everything's there, and then of course I'm on Facebook and everywhere if people want to come chat and hang out and have fun.
Links will be found in the notes. Undoubtedly.
Wonderful. I appreciate that, guys. It's really great. I'm glad to see a podcast like this.
We've wasted a couple of hours of your time. The least we can do is show people where to get your books.
Exactly. And then, all right, cool. So yeah, again, folks, he's on Amazon. You go to his website to find out more information about where to get the books. I said I picked up the Kindle version myself just because it's easier, it's just to download it, because I have a Kindle I just keep next to the bed. So like at night I usually read at night before I go to bed. So it's just right there. Just download the next book now, then download the next book, and it's and I think his ebooks are very reasonably priced. Because I've seen stuff out there that's like very expensive for ebooks. I'm like, really? I just might as well buy the print version,
I've actually just released a collected edition of it's Post-Apocalyptic Nomadic Warriors, Knights of the Apocalypse, and Pursuit of the Apocalypse in one Kindle book called the Boombox, and that's it's cheaper than buying all three together, so that's an option too.
Well, I've already bought the first one, so I'm screwed. So
yeah, no, I got you. That's good. Yeah.
All right, folks. One thing I want to do, I forgot to mention, is I wanted to just give a shout out, not related to Ben at all, but there's another podcast out there dealing with the apocalyptic genre. They called Glow Burn. They deal mainly with the Mutant Crawl Classics post-apocalyptic throwback RPG that's coming out. And one of the followers of our show said that Glow Burn gave us a shout out. So I'm giving a shout out back to the Glow Burn podcast so people can check them out, because I've had some people actually email me and say, "Hey, I heard about you guys on the Glow Burn podcast, and I like your show, and I listen to yours too." So I figure turnabout's fair play. So I wanted to give a shout out back to the Glow Burn about that. And it was funny, Scott, because the guy was just talking about us real quick. So he listened to some of the shows. He goes, "Oh, I can't remember the one guy's name, but the guy who one of the guys in the show was like a Gamma World fanatic expert, and I'm really jealous of his collection." So,
as well, he should be.
He should be, because I have an extensive Gamma World collection back there on the shelf. One might
describe it as frightening.
Yeah, it is. I'm obsessed. But so I wanted to give them back a shout out there, and just so Benjamin knows the details and some of the fans listening, it was like this video podcast, this video cast will be posted pretty much almost immediately onto the YouTube channel, so people will be able to see it there, and I'll provide you with links to share. I will also, sometime this week, I rip down the audio for the videos as well, so it's just the audio version. I post the audio on the blog so people could download the audio there, or it goes onto iTunes as well, so people will be able to listen to the audio cast as well. And I'll get you that information as I get it up, so you could share that around so people could listen to you and hear how awesome you are.
Oh, thank you, guys. I really do appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome. And just to let you know, folks, we're not going to disappear for 2 months again. Scott and I, like we said, we actually have several shows lined up. Both Scott and I are also finishing Shift. But that got slowed down a bit because we wanted to read Mr. Wallace's book. So Shift got put aside, so we finished Mr. Wallace's book so we could have him on the show. We're going to cover Shift, which is of course the second book in the Silo series after Wool, and then also we're going to do speaking of apocalyptic movies, we're going to talk about the post-apocalyptic film from the 80s, Night of the Comet. Is going to be an upcoming show, because that's just one of those classic movies. I just love that movie, So cheesy, tropey, the underground base with the government organization. It's all up your. It should be all up your alley too, Ben. I'm sure you've seen that.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's a good one. So we're gonna do a show dedicated to that, and plus we got some other ideas too. So we got a bunch of ideas of some stuff coming up, folks. We disappeared for a little while, like we tend to do, because the radiation levels get pretty high, so we can't get out of the bunkers, to raise the antenna to broadcast our wonderful show. So, but since radiation levels are down, we're past the radiation storm season, so we're gonna be getting some more shows out there. So that being said, again, folks. Go to BenjaminWallaceBooks.com so you could find out more about Ben's books, not just the Duck and Cover book series. He has other series dealing with, a lighthearted, fun look at the pulp books and the kind of the futurism with the Junkers series, you said. And so definitely check out his other books. I'm going to check them out myself, because I'm not just a one-trick pony as I present myself. I like reading other things, believe it or not. So, so go there. You can find him on Amazon, Benjamin Wallace. Just type it in. You'll pull him up immediately. So folks, check it out. We think we liked it. So we think you'll like it as well. And again, Ben, thank you for spending your later evening with us. We appreciate that, and we've really enjoyed talking to you and learning more about you and your writing and what you got coming up.
This was a blast. Thank you, guys. I really do appreciate it.
Thanks for spending your time with us.
Yeah. All right, folks. So we are going to officially wrap it up. So again, we will see you. We'll have another show soon, probably in the next week or two. We just got to finish our reading our book, and I'll get that posted, folks. And again, like I said, video will be up for those who didn't see it. People for the audio, that'll be up soon. So that's it, folks. We're going to see you out in the wastelands. Thank you, and good night.